Today I want to look at something a little different from what we've done for you in these movies before, and what I want to do is look at the subject of growing bonsai from seed. Now, if you're going to grow something from seed, it's no good starting if you're already 70 years old, because it's going to take too long. And also, if you want to grow some of the trees that you've seen us do previously, where you've got big massive gnarly trunks and things, that's really not feasible. But it's quite easy to grow some very nice small, particularly show-hin trees from seed. And the subject we're going to be looking at today is larch. Now, there are lots of different ways of growing from seed and producing bonsai, and lots of different ways of working with different species, and I'm not going to get into the intricacies of germinating seed. That's something that you can find out without any problem at all with a simple web search. But what I want to do is show you the technique that we use to produce some nice interesting little trees. Now, to begin with, what I've got is these little Japanese larch, and these are 2 years old, grown in the ground from seed. One of the mistakes a lot of people assume is that bonsai are grown from seed in a pot. If you start with a seed in a pot, you're never really going to be able to bulk up the trunk of the tree at all. So ground growing is the best way to go. And these little trees here, you can see this is the end of the first year's growth. This is the second year's growth. Now, the reason for working at this point is that being young and fairly thin, and also being large, they're very, very flexible. So we're going to be able to bend these and put some shape into the trunk. Now, if you want to grow straight trees that make little straight bonsai, then obviously you don't need to do this. It's no good trying to use starter trees if they're too thick, because you're not going to be able to get a really good, natural, convincing bend. If you've got trees that are quite thick, you can very easily get kind of a lazy S using wire, and you can bend them fairly easily that way. But these trees, being nice and small, are perfect for getting some really nice twists into. So the first thing, just remove these little pieces here, which are dead. And then what we do is take a piece of wire, and we wire this just like we would wire anything else in bonsai. Being careful of the roots. We leave a little piece of wire at the base that goes into the ground, and then holding the wire here, we can just twist that up. Make sure the wire is nice and close to the trunk, because if it's too far away, when you try and bend the trunk, you'll find that it will be inclined to split and break. So we just wire that as long as we need, making sure that we're not squashing the branches as we go. Take off that excess, and then looking at where the roots start, there's a point at which on trees like this most of the roots start. So that's obviously we're going to develop to be the future Nabari. Any small roots that are growing above that can be removed. Here you can see a fairly thick taproot that we're not going to need. We can get rid of that. And then the next thing is just to basically put some shape into that. If the wire is coiled so, we want to bend the trunk in that direction. If we go in the opposite direction, the wire obviously gets looser as we go. So just bending gently and then supporting the trunk with your fingers as you bend, you can see that it's fairly easy to get some nice tight bends into this tree. Bear in mind that as the trunk thickens, any very close bends, the gap between them will tend to disappear. So at the point that you're bending the tree, it's important to try and visualize how it's going to look as the trunk thickens up. At this point, we're not interested in the branch structure, because all we're doing is growing the trunk at this point. The branches come much later. So you can see there we've got a nice, simple, easy little bend. Just tighten that down. We've got all the roots off at one point, so now this is ready to go into the ground. We leave this top for the simple reason that if we try and grow this as we would bonsai, in terms of developing branch structure, we're not going to thicken the trunk. In order to thicken the trunk, this is going to need to grow, and depending on how thick we want the trunk, that depends on how long this is going to go. So if we grow this 12 or 15 feet long, we're going to end up with a really, really thick trunk. But in doing that, we need to maintain these small branches, because obviously if we just end up with a long bare trunk with all the foliage on the end, we're not going to have something suitable for bonsai. So we leave these nice and long at this point, and this grows. Eventually this is going to be removed, as I'll show you shortly, and then these branches will come into play. But this is how we get the basic trunk line ready to go into the ground. I've now prepared these little trees with wiring, and as you can see we've got some nice little twists in the trunk. The roots are pruned. Each one is a little different. We don't want to produce a whole bunch of trees all exactly the same. Slightly less twisting, slightly more twisting. So now these are ready to plant into the ground. When you're planting trees in the ground, it's a simple case of just digging a small hole, arranging the roots. Make sure the roots are arranged radially. That gives you a good nabari. If all the roots are squashed in the wrong direction, obviously that's going to give you a less than ideal trunk base. So it's just a matter of small hole. Just arrange the roots where you need them, and then just backfill that with your nice loose soil. Here we've got some more larch that have been in the ground for 3 years. Last summer we pruned out the leader and pruned the side branches. That's given us a base level of twigging that we can use. But now they're of a size that I'm happy with. Obviously we can lift these and transfer them to pots. Lifting trees like this is really simple. It's just a matter of cutting around all the way. Using a spade with a long blade is ideal, obviously, because it gets right underneath the tree, and then gently lifting, you can see that comes away just as easy as anything. And now we can take that into the workshop and transfer this to a pot. Now here you can see I've lifted these two trees, and this is useful to be able to see the difference when you're actually coiling up the tree. As I said before, if you coil it very small and very tight, the coils will, as they thicken, get close together, and that's exactly what's happened here. We made a lovely fat show-hin size, gnarly, twisty little tree. This one obviously was a bigger tree to begin with, and we couldn't get quite such an extensive bend. So here you can see that we've just got one basic bend, and then at this point we've got an elbow in this tree, and that was done where a leader was removed and a side branch taken up and grown, and then that leader's been removed. So now what we need to do with these trees is transfer them into bonsai pots, and so that obviously involves removing all of this field soil. Generally with trees like this, these are only 3 years in the ground, 5 years in total. Generally you'll find a lot of root very close to the trunk. If they've been in the ground for a long time, obviously you would have to dig a lot more soil because the roots perhaps would be further away. There is a case for pruning the roots in the ground, and that's important if trees are allowed to grow for a very long time. But for a short period of growth like this for 3 years, as you can see that's coming out of this soil here, we've got lots of root, so we know that we're okay. The trees are strong and vigorous because they've been in the ground, and so as a consequence we're going to be able to take this straight the way down to a training pot in one go without any problem at all. Now I've removed most of the soil from this, you can see we've got this nice compact root ball. You'll also notice there's no taproot because, like I showed you when we were putting the wire on, we removed that to begin with, and by arranging the roots as we put them in the ground, it does give us this nice compact root system with lots of roots emanating from the base of the trunk, which is important as we go on over the years to try and really build the nabari on this tree. Now I've cleaned most of the old soil off this tree, it's just a matter of getting this into a pot, and that's just like repotting any other bonsai. So we do need a securing wire. This wire's passed through the drainage holes. Try and select a good position for the tree because obviously you want it to look nice now that it's in the pot. Once you've got the position that you want, pass the wire over the roots. Then using some pliers we just twist the ends together. And you can see that's nice and secured in there, so that's not going to be able to blow around in the wind or fall out when we water it. then it's just a matter of filling the pot with soil, trying to arrange the roots so that they're all nicely tucked in. And I just like to go around that with my fingers, just work that in. Bear in mind, we're not repotting bonsai as such at this point. This is just a very early stage in the development of this tree. So the main thing is that we've got it in a pot and we're going to be able to establish it and start to build a really good bonsai root system. Lots and lots of very fine fibrous root very close to the trunk. And just remove the excess wire from there and take away the soil that we don't need. And there you can see that's nice and firm in that pot. That's ready for a water and that's not going anywhere. Now this little guy being really short and much tighter, we've got a lot more branches close in, so we've got a lot more that we can have a go at. So it's a matter of, again, removing the dead parts where previous pruning took place. And any branches that we don't need, for instance, there's one under here that's coming down towards the soil. That one we're not going to need at all. So that can go. You can do a reasonable amount of work on a tree at this stage because it's been growing in the ground for a period of time. Obviously, it's quite vigorous, so it will withstand this type of work without undue suffering. And again, I'm just going to use a little bit of wire to put some of these branches where I want them, and also to get a little bit of movement into this straight leader up here. So here we are now with these two little trees finished, and I thought just as a comparison I'd show you something. This is a black pine. This has a very similar growth rate to larch, and this is 2 years in a pot and this is 2 years in the ground. I think you can see the difference, and especially when you compare this, which is 2 years old, to these which are only 5 years old, and hopefully that gives you some indication of the success of ground growing trees. Now that these trees are finished, we'll basically give these a water, keep them out of the frost, and then in the spring they'll grow away as though nothing ever happened, because we've got good roots inside there. And you can see there are 1 or 2 wire marks, 1 or 2 pruning marks, and being larch they have very thick bark, so this will grow out very quickly within the next 2 to 3 years. And from this point on, the training and the growth, the work on these trees is just a very much normal bonsai technique. So you grow and you prune, you're building up the twig structure. Maybe in a couple of years' time we can do a little more wiring and really get some refinement into these trees. So as I said at the beginning, this is only one technique for growing bonsai from seed, but I think you'll agree from what you can see here that it really is quite successful. So thanks for watching.